Long before Iran became associated with Shi'i identity, before its seminaries, mourning rituals, and modern clerical state, it stood at the center of a much older civilizational inheritance. This was not a marginal land waiting to be shaped by others. It was one of the grand arenas of human power, a realm that challenged Rome, governed vast populations, and carried itself with imperial certainty. Ancient Persia was not merely a nation among nations. It was a world system, sustained by kingship, sacred order, and a religious imagination that define the soul of the state itself. When Islam later entered these territories, it did not arrive in an empty landscape. It encountered an old empire, a proud memory, and a people formed by centuries of political grandeur. That is why the later transformation of Iran cannot be reduced to a simple tale of conquest or conversion. The deeper question is far more unsettling. How did a land once tied to fire, then known for Sunni scholarship, eventually become the strongest stronghold of Shi'ism in the Muslim world? To understand the transformation, one must begin with the spiritual architecture that existed before Islam. In the distant past, in the regions of Central Asia and Eastern Iran, the figure of Zoroaster emerged. He was not simply a tribal preacher or a passing religious reformer. He represented one of the earliest known voices to speak with clarity about a moral universe governed by one supreme divine reality, opposed by the principle of evil, and headed toward final judgment. His teachings described human life as a moral trial between truth and corruption, light and darkness, righteousness and ruin. Souls would eventually cross a bridge of judgment, after which the just would enter a realm of radiance, while the wicked would descend into terror. These themes carry striking echoes of later religious language about accountability and the afterlife. It is no surprise that some Muslim scholars reflected on his status with seriousness, even if no definite conclusion was reached. When Muslims later ruled Persian lands, the Zoroastrians were not treated exactly like idolaters. Under the Caliphate of Umar, they were granted a position resembling that of protected religious communities who could preserve their faith in exchange for jizya. This mattered because it established from the outset that Islam's encounter with Persia was more layered than a crude confrontation between belief and unbelief. The Persian empires that rose under this worldview were among the greatest in human memory. The Achaemenids built a political structure stretching across continents, and centuries later, the Sasanian dynasty restored Persian prestige with remarkable force. Yet the Sasanian order rested on more than armies and palaces. It fused theology and statecraft so completely that loyalty to the crown also meant loyalty to sacred order. The monarch was imagined not merely as a ruler, but as a reflection of cosmic legitimacy on earth. Such systems appear invincible from a distance, but they often conceal rot beneath ceremony. Persian society had become rigidly stratified. Certain professions, especially those tied to production and manual work, were stigmatized as spiritually inferior. That kind of hierarchy does more than organize labor. It breeds humiliation, resentment, and quiet bitterness among those forced to carry a civilization without being honored by it. This social fracture would become critical later, because when Islam arrived, many among the marginalized saw in it not only a creed, but release. By the 7th century, the Sasanian Empire still looked formidable. It had crushed Byzantine forces repeatedly and pushed deep into Roman-held territories, taking major cities and appearing for a moment almost unstoppable. In Arabia, as the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, proclaimed Islam in Makkah, the unbelievers took psychological comfort in Persian victories. They saw themselves closer to the fire-venerating Persians than to the Byzantines, who, despite theological deviation, still belonged to the broad family of scriptural monotheism. When the Quran announced that the Romans, though defeated, would soon rise again, this seemed absurd to many. Yet that prophecy unfolded exactly as revealed. Heracles regrouped, reversed the tide, and broke Persian momentum. This reversal was not only a geopolitical event. In Islamic memory, it marked a public vindication of revelation itself. Around the same historical arc, the Sasanian realm entered terminal decline. Military defeat, internal fragmentation, palace intrigue, plague, civil war, and economic devastation shattered the empire's spine. The tearing of Kisra's arrogance after he rejected the Prophet's letter became, in Muslim telling, inseparable from the collapse of his dominion. Then came the astonishing phase that few observers of the time could have predicted. After the death of the Prophet, peace be upon him, the Muslim community did not retreat into tribal survival. It advanced toward the two superpowers of its age. Persia, despite its age, prestige, and military weight, could not hold. Battles such as Al-Qadisiyah and Nahawand became decisive not only because the Muslims won, but because they signaled the end of a civilizational order that had endured for 1,000 years. At Qadisiyah, the Persians arrived with elephants, armor, and the confidence of empire. The Muslims came with fewer numbers, but greater results, and when they adapted their tactics to neutralize the elephants, the battlefield turned. Soon after, Ctesiphon fell. The royal halls stood magnificent, but abandoned, their grandeur suddenly hollow. The old empire had not merely lost a war, it had been overtaken by a message carried by people the imperial world had underestimated. Yet conquest did not mean instant Islamization. That assumption is one of the biggest distortions in telling Iran's story. Persia did not become Muslim overnight, and its people were not simply marched into a new creed. Its language, customs, memory, and much of its administrative life endured. Conversion unfolded slowly, over generations, and the Islam that first spread through Iran was overwhelmingly Sunni. This point is essential. Many of the earliest and greatest minds of Sunni civilization came from Persian lands or Persian intellectual culture. Iran did not stand outside the Sunni world in its formative centuries. It helped build it. The major expansion of Islam in Iran accelerated under the Abbasids, not the Umayyads, partly because Abbasid rule weakened Arab ethnic privilege and gave non-Arab Muslims a more dignified place within the empire. Under the Umayyads, many Persians felt that although they had entered Islam, they had not entered equality. That emotional wound mattered. It pushed sections of Persian society toward political causes that resisted Arab dominance, and sympathy for the family of Ali gained power in that atmosphere. Still, sympathy is not the same as full doctrinal Shiaism. Iran's eventual sectarian transformation came much later through a long and cumulative process involving grief, power, literature, memory, and political engineering. The first great rupture inside the Muslim world changed everything. The murder of Uthman, the Caliphate of Ali, the wars of Jamal and Siffin, the emergence of the Kharijites, and the assassination of Ali opened a wound from which history never fully recovered. Two competing visions of authority hardened over time. One held that leadership was determined by the community, and that Abu Bakr, Umar, Uthman, and Ali were all rightful caliphs. The other insisted that rightful authority belonged to Ali and his descendants as the Prophet's family. Persia did not create this division, but Persian social and political conditions amplified certain interpretations of it. Ali became associated in the Persian imagination with moral legitimacy and distance from the early Arab military order that had subdued Iran. Emotional attachment to him deepened, while bitterness toward lots of Arab rule also persisted. Then Karbala gave that emotional current a permanent symbol. The martyrdom of Husayn was not geographically Iranian, yet over time it became spiritually central to Iran. A tragedy that should have united Muslims in sorrow was gradually transformed into a foundation for communal distinction and political mobilization. Still, Iran did not become Shia because Karbala occurred. That change required institutions, sponsors, texts, and states. Periods such as Buyid rule strengthened Twelver scholarship, and Mongol tolerance later created space for Shia development, while Sunni institutions weakened. Sufi movements and Alid loyalties grew in influence. But the decisive rupture came with the Safavids. Shah Ismail did not merely found a dynasty. He launched an identity project. In 1501, he declared Twelver Shia Islam, the official religion of Iran. And what followed was not a gentle theological persuasion. It was a coercive remaking of society. A land that had been predominantly Sunni for centuries was forced into a new confessional mold through pressure, propaganda, punishment, institutional restructuring, and violence against dissenting populations and scholars. This was not an organic overnight awakening. It was a state-directed transformation whose consequences shaped the entire Muslim world. The rivalry with the Ottomans intensified the process because sectarian differentiation now served geopolitical survival. Iran would not simply be another Muslim power. It would be a distinctly Shia one, consciously set apart from the Sunni imperial order next door. Once the educational system changed, once rituals changed, once legal culture changed, once new generations were raised inside that framework, Shiism ceased to be only the religion of the throne and became the religion of the population. That identity outlived the Safavids themselves. Later dynasties inherited a society already remade. The Khazars preserved the Shia structure, and the clerical class grew into a force more trusted than weak rulers. In the modern age, foreign intervention, oil politics, monarchy revolution, and the rise of the doctrine of clerical guardianship further fused religion and power in uniquely Iranian ways. The 1979 revolution did not invent Iran's Shia identity, but it weaponized and globalized it through a new political model. That model inspired some, alarmed others, and deepened both admiration and suspicion across the Muslim world. What then does this long history reveal? It shows that Iran's journey was never a straight line from ancient Persia to modern Shia statehood. It passed through fire temples, imperial collapse, Sunni scholarship, political grievance, sacred trauma, dynastic ambition, and ideological consolidation. It shows that Islam spreads most deeply through justice, not domination, and that when political injustice enters religious history, its consequences can echo for centuries. It shows that grief can become theology, theology can become statecraft, and statecraft can eventually become identity. Above all, it reminds you that nations are not frozen in one essence. Iran has been Zoroastrian, imperial, Sunni, Shia, scholarly, mystical, revolutionary, and contested, all across different ages. To read its past properly is to see not a single uninterrupted narrative, but a sequence of transformations, each leaving behind a layer that still breathes beneath the present.